Hey, thanks for being here. I'm your host, Una Duncan, and today's show is for anyone who kind of believes in magic, but you also want proof. Like, show me the receipts, show me the bank balance, and not just your good vibes and your worn out prosperity candle. If that sounds like you are going to love my next guest, the awesome Denise Duffield-Thomas. So, Denise is the author of the best selling books Get Rich, Lucky Bitch and Chillpreneur. So, I know her because she is the founder of Money Bootcamp, which is a course that I highly recommend. It helps women with their money blocks. Want to know what money blocks are? Okay, we're about to tell you. We also talk about why your money story might matter more than the inputs in your budgeting app. We talk about the ways that women unconsciously sabotage themselves financially. And I'm guessing you are probably going to recognize yourself here. We talk about how to start thinking like a rich person, even if your bank account isn't cooperating yet, and how to manifest in a way that isn't just procrastination and mental masturbation. I'm talking about the shit that works. So if you are at least woo curious, but you also want a really like practical path to financial freedom, grab a cup of something and check this out.
Ready to break up with your bullshit? I mean, all those excuses that are keeping you stuck. Because you have one life to live. And if you're not having fun yet, then that's a problem, dude. Welcome to Goals, Grit, and some woo-woo shit. The podcast where you learn about the habits of kicking ass at life. Whether you want to get ripped, get rich, or just get high on life, this is the place to be. Here's your host, best-selling author and feel-good expert, Una Duncan.
Denise Duffield-Thomas, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Una. I'm so thrilled to be able to talk to you from literally across the world.
Dude, I'm so pumped. Okay, let's launch right into it. Not all of my audience will be familiar with you and what you do, and I'm so excited to introduce you. But let's just start with some basics. So, what exactly is a money mindset, and how does it show up in our everyday lives?
Oh my God, it shows up in everything. So I started learning about money mindset from my money mentor, Kendall Summerhawk. And something that she said early on to me is how you do money is how you do everything. And so our mindset around money comes into so many different places in our lives. But of course, for those of us who are in business, who are entrepreneurial, it will impact us every single day. So a really simple example I always say to people is if you grew up hearing that it's really rude to talk about money, then you will struggle. You can see a direct through line to you right now where you might struggle setting your prices, telling people your prices, sending out invoices, chasing up invoices, anything like that to do with money, because every single cell of your body is saying, this is rude, this is impolite, this is gross. And that's just one example. And most people that I speak to, even if they've never heard of money mindset or they think that they are okay with money or they don't have money blocks, once you go on a bit of an exploration, you'll see that there are so many stories that you have that are impacting you every day. Some are good, but for most of us, they're just these unconscious stories and feelings about money that really do come into our lives in very, very practical ways. So my job is to help people detangle some of those things, excavate some of those stories so we can be aware of them and in some cases choose a different mindset about money, but also to be exposed to different viewpoints about money and to see people succeeding and talking openly and honestly about money. It can really help us in our own businesses to receive more, to make more, and just to feel better about our money.
Well, the example you gave about people not talking about money, I think most of my audience is probably not business owners, but even in a non-business owner context, if you don't talk about money, you might not realize that your male colleague is making, 30% more than you. You might not, you might look at people being like, how did you guys afford that, cottage or income property? And you don't realize that, oh, they leveraged their income this way. But there's all sorts of opportunities to make more that aren't happening because people are they've always been taught, oh, you don't talk about money. Money is secret.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or that money is for men to deal with, and right. I noticed that even after I'd been teaching this stuff for a while, I remember when kind of early on in my business, when my business was starting to make some good money, we sat down with a financial advisor and my first thought was, I'll let the men talk about money And because
wow.
we had
It was
our
your
little
business.
baby. It was my business, right?
Oh,
And so
wow.
we had our firstborn, and she was a bit fussy. And we sat down and I thought, I'll go change the baby and I'll let the men talk about money. And it just came into my head and I thought, where the heck did that come from? From many places, from growing up as a woman, and I took my power back in that moment. And I said to Mark, hey, can you go change the baby and I'll tell these guys about my
About
business
my
or
business.
about the
Yeah.
situation. And I just thought it's so ingrained. And I mean, I've been in entrepreneurship for a long time, but when I started to look at this stuff, I said, no wonder I didn't thrive in the corporate world. I had no idea how to play the game. I had no idea about how to ask for money and to advocate for my worth. And so I was always underpaid and I always sabotaged myself in so many different ways because I just wasn't comfortable with this idea of money and worth. And once you start digging into people's backgrounds a little bit, it's not as simple as, oh, you grew up without much money or you grew up poor, so therefore you have a bad money mindset and vice versa. It is so complex. And sometimes it's the contrast of what you grew up with or the way your parents spoke about money. Or, for example, and this is such a huge one, I'm opening a can of worms here. Say, for example, your parents got divorced and you heard many, many fights about, you guys call it alimony in
Sure.
Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
alimony, child support. That can have such a deep impact where people are not even aware that my self-worth, my one of my parents did not want to pay for me. And of course,
Ooh,
as an adult, it's
that's not.
about
Yeah.
control and all this kind of stuff. But there's sometimes this deep feeling of I'm not worth it. And think about where that shows up in so many ways. And you see it with women and mums where it's like everyone else gets, I'm going to, get it last. I'm going to eat the burnt toast. And it shows up in our careers. It shows up in our businesses, of course. But sometimes it's in the way that we treat ourselves on a daily basis. Do you give yourself permission to receive compliments?
Hmm.
Do you,
Untangle
to
that for me. How is
anything?
that related to
Yes.
money mindset?
Yes. Okay. So I think a lot of women in particular are taught that it's better to give than receive. So when we think of money mindset as a receiving problem sometimes, maybe you feel like you're unworthy of anything good. You're not allowed to receive. You always have to give, give, give. So if you even struggle to receive a compliment, you're always deflecting. That might show up in other ways around your money. So another little example, someone might say, well, you paid for coffee last time. Let me pay for it. And you go, no, no, no. And so you might have this thing of, no, 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 I'm never allowed to receive. And then that can
Right.
show up in your career, in your business, in so many ways, but even around pleasure. I'm not allowed to receive pleasure. I'm not allowed to rest. I'm not allowed to, I don't deserve, having a healthy body. I don't deserve to eat beautiful food, or good food. I don't deserve organic food, for example.
Sure. Yep.
It could show up in so many different ways around worthiness. And actually, at the very start of my career, for a teeny tiny moment, I was coaching people on finding their soulmate.
Okay.
And you know what? The lessons are exactly the same. And
I bet they
I'm
are.
sure, yeah. And I'm sure it's the same with, I don't know, looking after your body or getting healthier. It's the exact same stuff.
Can I ask you to go on a little tangent, a little bio
I love
background?
tangents.
Because so Denise, when I first got into your world, it was you had written Lucky Bitch. And it was about the fact that, and you correct me because I'm going to get the story all wrong. You had manifested a trip around the world where you got married like 40 times. Please tell this story. It's insane.
Okay, so this is actually when I started really deep diving into the law of attraction.
Okay.
And some people are skeptical about the law of attraction, and I totally get it. What I was really, really doing was working on my worthiness to receive. So I was doing a lot of mirror work, looking in the mirror. I've got a mirror right here in my office and saying, I love you. I approve of you. You deserve good things to happen. And I started allowing myself to dream, which is really hard for some people. What do I want in my life? And we got married. My husband and I got married, and I was on honeymoon, And I literally looked up at the stars and the moon and I made a wish. And I said, more of this, please, universe, more of this. And I got home and I started getting very specific about what I wanted.
Which was more honeymoons?
Well, it wasn't. I wasn't specific enough. That's a good. What I meant was, I meant pleasure, joy, relaxation, abundance. And I started writing down all of these things that I wanted to do. And I went, you know what? I've been thinking about running a business for a long time. I really want to run a business or have a business. I really want to write a book. I really want the universe to send me something that's book worthy. Okay. So all of these things were happening before the trip. And so weird stuff started happening. I went to an event and I won the door prize, which was a self-publishing course.
Wow.
Yeah. It was really crazy. And then I said, okay, it's time for me to go into coaching. I signed up for a webinar, didn't even turn up. And the prize on the webinar was a life coaching qualification.
What?
Yeah. And so all these little things. And then I started telling all my friends, Mark and I are going to go traveling. I want to go traveling around the world for 6 months. And they'll go, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, I don't know, maybe someone will pay me to blog or something, because blogging was kind of a new thing. I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to do it. And I put a little post-it on my office and it said 6 months. And I was like, someone's going to pay me to do this. And I even put an amount of money, and it was something like, I don't know, $3,000 a month or something. And my friend, and I started telling everyone, this is the key sometimes about this, right? I started talking to people about it, the right people who support, wacky dreams, not the people who go, well, that sounds dumb. Who do you think you are? Exactly. That never happens. So a friend sent me a message and she said, I found the perfect competition for you guys. And it was a honeymoon company who were advertising. They wanted honeymoon testers to travel around the world for 6 months, all expenses paid. And the salary was the amount I'd put on my Post-it note. That's the thing, you can't make this up. So when Mark came home from work that day, I was like, oh my God, it's going to happen. This is the thing but we had to apply for it. We had to make a video, and for the next couple of hours, I was going to murder that man, because I was like, all we have to do is do a video and upload it by midnight. So we'd put the camera on and then I'd go, you were looking in the wrong camera. You were like this. And then he flubbed his, I was like, this is just going to be crazy. So we ended up getting it in, and then the competition went viral and they had 30,000 entries over the next couple of weeks. They reopened it. So we were I've never been early for anything in my life, but somehow the judges saw our video because it was one of the first couple ones that came in, and they were very excited to watch every single one. And so for the next, I think it was like a 6-week kind of thing, every day I pulled out all of those manifesty tools that I'd read from lots of different places. And the thing is, if you're very skeptical about that, it's not that those things are the magical things. Each thing gave me a little bit more confidence that we're going to win it. And I wrote this, as you said, in my book, Lucky Bitch, because that was part of it as well. It wasn't necessarily the travel. I was asking the universe, I want more pleasure, joy, adventure, excitement, and I want to write a book. And I feel like the competition kind of got caught up in my, belief about all of those things. So part of it was when we went into the final interview, which was 10 couples eventually got to go to Ireland, and it was like the Amazing Race by the end, running around this little town doing things. But I said to them, we're going to get married everywhere we go, and we're going to break the Guinness World Record for most married couples.
You're so smart.
And so they, it was just part of that thing of they went, oh my God, they got swept up in our belief for it. But the record was 83 weddings.
You got married 80?
No, we got married 87 times. Because we had to break the record in 6 months. The problem was, Una, you're going to laugh at this. By the time we handed in all of our paperwork, the current couple, and this is their thing, this is all they do, they get married, they were up to like 97. And by that stage, I was so sick of my husband. I was so sick of wedding dresses. I was like, I'm out. I'm never doing this ever, ever again. But it made a great book. It made an amazing
It
book.
made a
So
great book.
that was super fun. It was super fun. And I love when you just feel in the flow with something and you feel so certain that it's going to happen. And I believe you can reverse engineer that. So I teach that a lot to say, you do have to put yourself, I don't know, meet the universe halfway with things. And then things happen that feel magical on the outside, but really you've kind of made it an inevitability.
So can you first, I have one quick question. Did you wear a different wedding dress every time?
Those convertible dresses?
Oh, yeah. It can be a sarong. It can be a, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my God. A nightmare.
You converted the hell out of that dress?
I converted it so much, but I remember I'd be like, Mark, can you and he'd be go, I don't know what to do. And I'd be like, just bloody tie it. So sometimes it was a bit, wonky donkey.
It's like a Barney Rubble.
It was all different. I got very creative. Let's say that. So there'd be sometimes I'd just borrow things or find things, but it was pretty much we lived in one suitcase for 6 months. And the technology too, because this was back in 2010, we didn't have iPhones. We had a very early Mac. And so much of that trip was finding Wi-Fi, trying to download SD cards, all that stuff. So it really opened my eyes, I think, to the work behind some of those things too. And I'm just so lucky it was not a reality TV show, because there were points where I was like, I have to marry you today and I hate you. Okay. There was some days we got married 5 times in a day.
Oh my gosh.
Then we might have a couple of weeks off from marriages, but yeah, it was intense. I do not recommend.
Okay. All right. I'll just check that off my list then. So Denise, after that experience, you wrote your book, and Lucky Bitch kind of positioned you as like, I am the master manifester and I can help you manifest things. So for those that are listening and being a bit like, a manifesty eye rolly, can you kind of break that down in a really down to earth terms? Like how does one manifest and what does that really mean?
No, I totally get it. I'm a Virgo and I am so practical. And when I first started learning about the law of attraction, I honestly didn't understand what the actions were, because it seemed like you had to be pure in thought and meditate a lot. And I cannot meditate. I have ADHD. It just does not work for me. And I also had those feelings deep down. I'm like, I'm actually not that good a person. So obviously I'm not worthy of manifesting things. So I really broke it down into some very practical steps and I've got a 5-step process that might be takes a while, but if anyone's interested, there's a free course on this. If you go to denisedt.com/manifest, sorry,
leave it in the notes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But basically the 5 steps are declutter, which is really interesting because even with the competition, I actually think one of the reasons why we won is because we decluttered so many things in our life before we even got to that final 10. And by that, I mean any obstacles in the way. So a few of those people, they were thinking, what am I going to do with my house, my pets, my job, my boss, that wedding I'm going to in 2 months? I'd actually gone through all of those things. I'd said to them, I can't go to your wedding. I'm going to be traveling around the world. We had tenants. We had our cats sorted. We had, we'd told our bosses. Everyone thought we were crazy, but there was something there about we were ready to go. And this is the same if you want to manifest a new house or whatever, is what can you let go of to create space for that new thing? And sometimes it's a little test of faith almost. And because you think, well, I can't tell my friend I'm not going to my wedding because what if I don't get the job?
Yeah.
You're not ready for it.
You're not ready for the job. If you have that little shred of doubt, you think you're not ready for it.
You can't go. And I've said this to someone actually in my dance school where I said to her, you really want to go on a cruise ship. You want to be a cruise ship dancer. I was like, you need to create space for it because you keep on making these commitments and you're going to go into that audition with all of that
clutter, mental clutter, energetic clutter. Yeah. Yeah.
Everything. So I look at it from lots of different ways. Sometimes people have to do physical decluttering. And this is what I used to do when I was doing like the soulmate coaching. I'd say, where's that person going to put their stuff? Like, like your room is so cluttered. You are sleeping on a bed with all these books on the other side of the bed. Clear out the bedside drawer. Clear out half your closet. One lady I was helping to manifest a partner, I said, you run a meditation center from your house. Like there's no room for this person to get in. One person even had literally just piles of stuff in their house. I was like, they can't physically get in the door. Sometimes it's old stuff. So again, on the soulmate thing, I don't know why someone obviously needs to hear this today, but one of the things that one of my friends did in a pre-marriage course, she had to get rid of gifts from old partners.
Okay.
As a symbolic thing.
Mm.
And I often do that with entrepreneurs too. I'll say, go get rid of all your old business cards, that pile of books from an old business that you don't just
old websites, old domains, all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think similar, if someone wants to have, a new healthy lifestyle, you would get them to go through their fridge and their cupboard. Or,
get rid of all the ice cream or whatever is their trigger food, for sure. Yeah.
So it's like shedding and making space is such an important first step.
Can I tell you the little resistance that came up for me in your first example? I imagined myself clearing out the drawer and then sitting on my bed and looking at this empty drawer, being like, but where's my beloved? I imagined it like just kind of making me sad every time I saw that empty drawer.
Yes. And that's why it's always path of least resistance. So you know what it's like when you think, I've got to declutter everything in my life?
Mm.
And professional organizers will say, start with one drawer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you always start with what is causing me the most doubt, what is creating the most stress, what is taking up the most amount of space. But you know what? This is perfect because in my world, I say, when in doubt, shave your legs.
Okay.
And that means sometimes you feel so stuck and you don't know what to do. What is one little thing that you could do? And so go shave your legs, because it's almost like this symbolic thing of, I'm just letting go of anything. I'm open to new experiences. And when you shave your legs, you do feel like a bit like, ooh, just a little bit special. But for some people, it might be go wash your hair. Something that just gives you a bit of a reset and feeling open to possibility. I know, when you have one of those everything showers and you wash your hair and you shave, you come out, you think, I can conquer the world.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny because, I've done your boot camp and I've gone through the decluttering process, and there is something magical about, it's like when you declutter for a new, year of school or something like that, and you get rid of all the old books and you're ready for the fresh new beginning. Okay. So what would you say is step number 2 when it comes to manifesting?
Step number 2 is actually ask for what you want and to decide what you want. So for some people, that's goal setting. For some people, that is like just being clear on what it is that you want, and it could be, for me, the fact that I actually wrote down, I want to go traveling for 6 months. It gave me a bit of a focus, and similar to the decluttering, it was, okay, well, if this is true, if I am going to go traveling, what does that mean? And so I find that when I run goal setting workshops live, you'll see people and they just go completely blank.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
And this is like calling up your local pizzeria and saying, send me a pizza. And they go, what do you want? And you go, whatever you think I'll like. We do this all the time.
Yeah. And the pizza's like, hey,
and so
click.
Exactly. Yeah. And so actually in the soulmate stuff too, I would get people to write down a list of all the things they wanted in a partner. And you start to second guess yourself because you go, well, no one can be that good. And it doesn't matter. Just write it down anyway. And this is the same if you're wanting to manifest a house. Writing down a list, and you could separate it into deal breakers and preferences, right? Because you start to second guess yourself. I did this one time with a new job, and I remember thinking, what I really want is a really short commute. And I remember thinking, but I'm not allowed to have that. There's no businesses around here. And I put under 20 minutes, and my mind was just going, you're never going to get it. I found a job 5 minutes walk from my house, a perfect job, 5 minutes from my house, because I gave myself permission to write it down. And this is where the money mindset stuff comes in, because sometimes we actually have to go back and heal the fact that we really wanted this particular doll for Christmas when we were 8, but we got this thing instead. And then we decided, I never get what I want.
Right. And we don't realize we're thinking that. This is old subconscious stories that we invented a long time ago. Yeah.
Or I'm going to be disappointed. Or if I ask for something and I get it, something bad will happen to balance it out. Or I'm going to be told that I'm greedy. Or if I get the thing, someone won't like me. And there's a very specific example. I've heard this so many times where someone says, I got the lead in the school play and then all my friends didn't like me anymore.
Yeah.
You know, little things like that. You just think, oh God, you think it's so easy sitting down, writing down goals? No, there's a lot of stuff that goes behind it.
Yeah.
So there's a little practice that you can do to help you decide what you want. And it could be that when you sit down at a restaurant, before you even look at the menu, you ask yourself and think, what do I want? And then when you open the menu, without looking at the prices, you could say, what do I feel like? This was so hard for me, Una. I can't even begin to tell you how hard it was for me because I was always, you get what you're given. You get what you're given. You're not allowed to express preferences. You're not allowed to ask because my mum was a single mum. So it was always, that was the answer. It was like, well, I'm a single mum. What am I supposed to do?
Right. Yeah.
You know,
you get what you get and you don't get upset.
Exactly. You know, in the UK, they say you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. And it annoys me so much that it doesn't rhyme. So I'm so glad that you said it like the ways we say it in Australia. So I think a lot of people get stuck at that step number 2 for all of those reasons. And so sometimes you have to go back and do a bit of decluttering. You have to go back or just say, you know what? I know it's probably not going to happen, but I'm just going to write it down anyway. And like me sort of saying, I'm going to go 6 months, I'm going to do this. There's something there that then because I told people about it, that's what I got. Imagine if I just said, I just want to go on one free trip. You know, my friend would have never thought about me.
No, that's true. That's true.
I wouldn't have been ready.
But everyone is, maybe not everyone, but I know some people are listening here be like, but what if you don't get it? And you've made a fool of yourself and everyone's being like, so where's your trip, Denise? You know, like, so what about that fear?
Exactly. Well, that is part of the receiving block that so many of us have, right? Is that I'll be embarrassed, I won't get it, or whatever it is. So step number 3 is about immersing yourself in possibility as much as possible. So for some people, that is not being around negative people for a while and kind of crowding out the negative thoughts or feelings by adding in possibility. So I like to look at it from either my whole day and think, what can I put into my day to make me feel good now? Or I like to think of it from all of my senses. So if you're a visual person, dream boards actually do work. You know, and it's not just, you know, cutting out things. It could be, what's your screensaver on your phone? Is that a picture of your goal? You know, we talk about this in Money Bootcamp about using money anchors. My goal that whole time, for when we were manifesting the trip, my password at work was, you know, travel around the world. And so I typed it in 1 million times a day.
Didn't you have your husband Mark in your phone and his name is like fellow millionaire Mark or something like that?
Yes. I've changed that a few times. I think it was, ultimate job winner Mark.
Nice.
Yes, at that time. And then it was, you know, I had my mum in there for a while as proud of her author daughter when I wanted to write my first book. So all of those little things, they go in. You know, they really do. So if you're more of a olfactory person, I used to light a candle that smelled like a beach when I wanted to manifest my beach house. So all of those things, you can layer them into your day because that helps you with the fear and the doubt. You know, so it's like when you get in your car or when you're on your commute, what are you listening to? What are you reading? What are you looking at? And when I'm manifesting something that's really big and I need those extra little boosts, I'll put stuff all over my house. So I would put, for that trip, I had a picture, a little framed picture of like a postcard by my bed. First thing I saw. I put a A4 piece of paper on my ceiling above my bed saying ultimate job winner. Throughout the day, I would say, Mark and Denise, the winners are Mark and Denise. I put pictures of my dream board, which was all pictures of, beautiful honeymoon destinations, inside my drawer at work. So then I would just open my drawer and just look at it and go, that's my reality. Yeah, that's happening. All of those things are just to boost your confidence, and you can really go crazy on it. And I often do. So, I'm wearing my bee necklace. When we were manifesting the trip, I had a necklace that had yes on it, and I wore it every day. And so I could look down and go, yes, yes, yes. And I wore it in the final interview too. And I just know that was like a little subconscious thing for the judges. They could just say yes, 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 yes all the time. And, I'm not a scientist, but all of those things, they have some scientific backing.
Sure.
In what are you training your brain to look for? What little subconscious things are you putting in there that, again, are bolstering your belief that this is possible? And sometimes you need that to be able to take action, which is the next step.
Well, and other people around you. If you marched into that final interview and in your mind, in your soul, in every cell of your body, you were the one coming on this trip, on some level, those people probably responded to that like, oh, okay, well, here she is. I guess, this is the person, because you presented as such. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think too, it's all of those little confidence things. I took action, and that is step number 5. It's not just, I'm going to research stuff. It's inspired action. And inspired action is often stuff that involves other people, that meets the universe halfway, that is bold, like, deciding to rent out our apartment. That was inspired action.
Yeah, you really decluttered.
Absolutely.
Hey, super quick interruption. So my 100th podcast episode is coming up soon, and I would love your help celebrating. So if there's been a moment in the show, a nugget that blew your mind, a story that made you sit in your driveway to hear the end, maybe a moment you laughed out loud, I would love to hear about it. Just head to the show notes, hit the Speak Pipe link, and leave me a quick voice note. It's super easy, and you might just hear yourself on the 100th episode. Thank you so much.
When I wanted to write that book, Lucky Bitch, one of the inspired actions I took was getting a wait list of people to buy the book.
Oh, wow.
The book wasn't finished.
Yeah.
But I knew it wouldn't be finished unless I had people who were waiting for it, just like a university assignment that has an immovable deadline. So that was an inspired action. And often what we do is busy work action that really doesn't involve anyone else. There's no accountability. And so anything that's really big, I've heard skeptics of things like the law of attraction say, but if you're taking action, well, doesn't that negate? And I'm like, manifesting means to make real. We manifest something. We manifest it in the real world. You do have to meet the universe halfway. You do have to put yourself in there, and then it becomes this inevitability. It doesn't happen by just sitting back and waiting for things to happen. So that inspired action is usually things that sometimes get you out of your comfort zone a little bit, involve other people, sometimes give you no way out. That's my favorite, right? Because I'm good under pressure. And just taking things into your own hands, but expecting that you are going to get a good result from it.
I've actually heard you say before, Denise, one of the best ways to manifest something is to buy it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But there's a block around that sometimes, right? Of just going, I'm not allowed to have it. I'm not allowed to have it. I'm not allowed to receive, which is step number 5, is receive it. And I think sometimes this is a real block for people, right? Because say, for example, you ask for a new job and you're doing all the steps, and then you get a job that comes in that's a non-ideal job. And some people go, well, I manifested, I have to take it. You go, no. The lesson around number 5 actually is you're allowed to renegotiate. You're allowed to say almost, but not quite. And you don't have to get what you get and don't get upset. It's a big lesson for people to go, it's not quite right. So then you can go, okay, well, what else do I need to do? And sometimes you need to go back a little bit in some of the steps and go, I actually wasn't specific enough. I need to put a few of these things in. you know, when you sort of say to you start to say to your friends, you know, I want a new job, or, you know, even, you know, I want to find a partner. And so they go, well, how about this? And you go,
always.
you go,
Yeah.
I actually meant this. And I think some people get stuck there because they think, well, no, I've made my bed, I have to lie in it, you know? And sometimes there's real power in saying no to things. And that is a part of the receiving, but it's also receiving in all those little areas as well. So in that kind of lag between what you want and what, you know, so it hasn't shown up yet. The idea of it is to say yes to as many things as possible, but also no and maybe.
And maybe.
But if it was this, you know, you're allowed to negotiate. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to say, hey, universe, what I meant was this. And that's why it's almost a bit of a circle. There's no like there where it's like, oh,
and
yeah.
now I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And I find even in that, there's lessons in going, oh, I really need to do some mental decluttering around this, around what I'm allowed to have.
And worthiness, like if someone presents you a 7 out of 10 opportunity or, you know, partnership or job or whatever, you'd be like, well, okay, it's kind of close. Whereas you have to have the mindset to be like, actually, I am worthy of the 10 out of 10 that I asked for. So my next question for you is, so we do all this work on worthiness, on, you know, this idea that we are worth getting the things that we want. And that's so much of what you teach. Is there a difference between worthiness and entitlement? Or is that a useless distinction?
Oh, you know, I feel like the only people who really stress about that are people who probably wouldn't be entitled anyway. You know, it's like the people who go, am I a narcissist? And it's like, narcissists wouldn't ask that, you know, or am I a bad parent? It's like, well, the really bad parents are
Probably
not stressing about that. I think it's such an interesting word though, because I'm curious for you as well. Has that got a particular meaning for you, the word entitlement?
Oh yeah, entitlement, that's all kinds of, you know, spoiled brat, you've done nothing to deserve this. I mean, talk about money blocks. The word entitlement to me feels very loaded.
Yeah, I bet. I feel like this, for some people, it's like, if I get what I want, people are going to think I'm too big for my boots, that I'm a bitch, that I'm not nice. It's a loaded word for a lot of women too. And I think that is part of the decluttering, right? Is, are we allowed to have what we want and still be a nice person or a good person? And everyone's got their own little line around that. I feel like mine is always, people are going to think that I'm not down to earth or humble enough. And so everyone's got their own little word around that. We didn't even touch on this, but one of the courses that I run, as you know, is Sacred Money Archetypes. Again, Kendall Summerhawk's work that I'm licensed in. And every archetype has their own particular wound. And the entitlement one is very much a romantic, celebrity, sometimes ruler wound. I'm curious if any of those are in your top 3.
Oh gosh, I think I was a ruler celebrity.
There you
Something
go.
like that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously. No. Totally.
Yeah.
That's really interesting you picked that out. I guess, and this idea of I don't want people to think I'm not nice, or I'm too big for my boots, or what, I feel like that's always, ever since I've been in your world, that's huge for so many women. But I think even more so now. I mean, one of the biggest blocks is I don't want to be rich because rich people are assholes. Like, this is huge right now, at least in my world.
Yep, mine too, right? Absolutely. We saw what happened. I mean, what's happening right now as we're recording is the space flight, right?
Yes.
So much backlash about it, of being, this is out of touch, this is gross, you know, and I've really refrained from commenting on it because people have got to have their stuff. And that is absolutely true. It's really difficult time at the moment of massive inequality. And it is really hard, I think, for people then to go, but is it okay for me to want these things? when there's so much going on. And, you and I, neither of us live in the States. I have a lot of clients in America. There's so much stuff going on for them at the moment. And what I realized is there's never a good time, ever. If someone's like, oh, why, don't share what's good for you at the moment. I'm like, there's never going to be a time where there's not something really horrible going on in the news.
Right.
Never.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And so I think, though, again, if we're worried about that, that just shows that we are someone who is conscious and aware of it.
But would you say being conscious and aware of it is a money block?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I think we should be, and I think it's important for us to be able to live with that. What is that non-binary thing of going, it's not like I'm not allowed to be rich and nice, rich and generous, rich and down to earth, rich and caring, rich and environmentally conscious. We can live in all of those things. I think what happens, though, for women is that it becomes a perfectionism thing. We're all going to be shades of gray. I know people who are poor to rich, all spectrums of nice, down to earth.
Sure. Yeah.
There's not much correlation sometimes. So we have to decide for ourselves, how do I want to live? And can I live with those things inside me of going, okay, can I be rich? And whatever it is, everyone's got their own little thing. For some people, I can be rich or I can be a good parent. I can be rich or I can have love. Some people feel like they have to choose that, right? If I have this, I have to give up that. And then that becomes self-fulfilling for us. I can be rich, I can be a good person. I can care about my clients and my community, or I can make money, but not both. That's
a big one for entrepreneurs, for sure. Huge. For sure. I remember the first time somebody said, if you really cared about people, you wouldn't charge. And I was like, oh my God, is that true? And then I just had to really think it through. I was like, wait a second, if I didn't charge, then I would have to get another job and then I wouldn't be able to help anyone. So actually that doesn't make sense at all. But I felt it, all sorts of fear in my body before I had that belabored mental process of being like, that doesn't make sense.
I think everyone's gotten that email before and it hurts. It really hurts.
Oh, especially when you're first starting out and you're so proud, but you're also so like shy about saying like, hey, can you pay me a little bit for this? Where are you with this money block now? Like, do you ever feel shy about saying like, I'm rich and I'm really proud about it?
Yeah, all the time. I go through different phases of it. And I think what's really important too is that you surround yourself with people who want to see you thrive and win. And, I've got friends who are at all different income levels, but I feel like now I've curated friends who we're happy to see each other succeed. But I still have money blocks that I deal with all the time, and I think that's the perfectionism thing. We often think, well, here's me now with all my flaws, and there's this perfect version of myself who is, has the perfect body or the perfect mindset, and she is deserving of the money. I'm not. But one day I'll become her and then I'll be worthy of it. Not realizing, well, you're always going to be you. And the more you can kind of meld those versions of yourself together, you can go, oh, well, I'm in a work in progress now and I will be forever. So I can receive the things I want now because I'm never going to be perfect. But unfortunately, we do feel like there's those, there's just something outside of us. One day I'll be perfect and then I'll be worthy for anything, love, good things, good friends, time off, whatever it is. We always think
later,
one day.
Once I'm more perfect. Actually, Denise, one of the most powerful things I've ever got from you, I was in an event that you were running, and you had women stand up and ask their question or whatever. Whenever they were done, they had to look at the audience and say, "This is what a wealthy woman looks like." And it's so fucking good. Because everyone has a picture. When I picture a wealthy woman, and here, this is probably me revealing all sorts of fucked up psychology and money blocks. When I picture a wealthy woman, I picture Cruella de Vil.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I am so covered in fur and, like just ruthless and tearing down everyone in her path. And instead, you had these beautiful, and especially my audience is a lot of people who are on a fat loss journey often. And so the idea that you have that wealthy women are skinny, wealthy women are white, wealthy women are wear high heels. Like,
and
you know how
wear
great it was?
white or
And
beige.
wear the chic, like whatever you're supposed to wear. So it was so awesome to be in a room where you would have women of all different body types wearing their Birkenstocks, in their boho or whatever, and saying, guess what? And all different, ethnicities saying, this is what a wealthy woman looks like. And you would look at them and go, awesome. That just completely expanded my completely subconscious idea of what wealthy women are supposed to look like.
Yes, this is such a powerful exercise that you can really customize as well. Because the first couple of times I did it, inspired by Louise Hay's work, mirror work again, I remember just thinking, nope, it's not what a wealthy woman looks like. Maybe if you had your hair done, maybe on a good day. And I think it's important to do it on all of the days, right? So when you wake up in the morning, you can be like, well, this is what a wealthy woman looks like, and customize it. So it could be, this is what a wealthy queer woman looks like. This is what a wealthy non-binary person looks like. This is what a wealthy daughter of immigrants looks like. And you add as many things on there as possible, because you'll realize that you'll have stories about each of those things and more. And the repetition of it is good, but it's also good just to be aware of what that little voice is saying. No. And this is where that step number 3 is surrounding yourself with possibility, is then go and curate your social media feed to make sure you're following people who are like you, because you'll have a story and going, well, I can't be wealthy because I'm a single parent. Okay, well, you need to bring in examples of that. Read books, watch videos, listen to podcasts. Or you go, I can't be wealthy because of my accent. Well, then you need
I was just going to say, one of mine is my Canadian accent. 100%.
Which is so funny, but I get it, because my first year of business, I thought I need to go get elocution lessons because no one's going to understand my Australian accent. So stupid. It's so weird. But we all have those things. I remember thinking, well, I can't be rich. I've got curly hair and no one's going to take me seriously. I'm 5'4". And I remember my friend telling me as a kid, like, she was very tall. So she was like, all the successful people are really tall. And I was thinking, well, I'm 5'4". And then I was like, Madonna's 5'4". I had to give myself that little bit of evidence to say,
right.
Well,
I'm
she's
also
successful.
5'4", and I've heard you say that money block before, and I was like, oh, I don't have that one at all. It never occurred to me. But that's awesome. And now us and Madonna. So I think we've got plenty of evidence of 5'4" being a very successful height.
Exactly. And it sounds silly to say, but I'm sure everyone listening, you've got your own things. It's like, well, I can't because I'm from this place. I can't because I have a disability, or I have a chronic illness, or I have these things. And all of those things can be real. I'm not, gaslighting anybody and saying it's not going to be challenging for some people. But sometimes we have so many stories ourselves that we're carrying that we can let go of. We can't control other people, but we can try and let go of those stories, and to give our brains examples, really deliberately seek out those examples. And that mirror work, you can write it on your mirror in a whiteboard marker. It will come off, don't worry. And, this is what a wealthy woman looks like. It is very, very powerful, I think.
It really is. And so, well, you mentioned, you don't want to gaslight anyone who faces legitimate barriers, for sure. And I know that you grew up on welfare, or you've mentioned that before. So, how do you talk to someone who says, fuck off talking about my mindset? It's not my mindset. It's the fact that wages haven't kept up with inflation. It's the fact that there's a housing shortage and prices are crazy. I can't fucking mindset my way out of this. What would you say to that?
Well, we have to live in a real world, right? There's gravity, there's real things. So we have to look at what are the things within my control. So I can't control inflation. I can't control who's president right now, but I can control how I feel about myself. And I think that is so important, because that worthiness piece does make a huge difference. And when we close down those tabs, in our mind, and we do that decluttering, it gives us energy to find solutions. It gives us energy to take action on things. And yes, there will be some times that feel more challenging than others. Absolutely. But there's always something that is within our control. And, you know, like some things will be challenging. They absolutely will. But you can control how you feel about yourself. And I think in Lucky Bitch, one of the things is get your boobs on board. And the thing that I used to do before I'd go to sleep, I'd go through every single body part and I would send love and acceptance and appreciation. And what I noticed is that I had a negative story about every single part of my body in some way. I was like, you're wrong. There's something wrong with you. I don't like you. And I was like, how am I supposed to do big things and overcome, you know, challenges and put myself forward for things when I have these really fundamental thoughts about myself as being deeply flawed and unworthy? And so I did so much self-love work. That was pretty much my first couple of years in business or in changing my life, was literally, I love you to myself again and again and again. And I was like, I'm going to get every cell of my body on board. I'm going to flood my body and every cell with so much self-love and worthiness that it is going to help me to take action and do something different in my life. So yeah, get your boobs on board, get your knees on board. You know,
Right.
I was like, oh my God, my toes are so ugly. And I was like, why am I thinking this about myself? When you feel worthy, it does translate into the real world. You do take action on things. You do apply for things. You do ask for more things. And it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy that, you know, from the outside to other people looks like magic. And, you know, oh, wow, things just happened for you. And you think, no, I had to do a million of these little things. And each one moves the needle like one tiny little bit.
Tiny bit.
And that was enough.
You know, I've mentioned I've been following your work for so long, and you used to post about body image issues a little bit. How do you translate the work that you do with money mindset towards someone who is not feeling great about themselves and their body?
Well, I think it's the same stuff, right? It's that self-love, and to even going and doing the decluttering around that. What stories do I have about my body and love, my body and money? I actually had to really unwind a lot of things because being a kid on welfare, sometimes there was scarcity around food. And I realized that I had a very direct through line to money around that, being in this feast or famine relationship with money. If I got some money in, I had to spend it really quickly. Just like as a kid, where I thought, if there's nice food, I'm going to eat it right now because there might not be
because there might not be nice food later.
That's right. And so there were a lot of parallels for me. Also, that feeling of I'm not worthy of more money unless I'm at a particular size. I'm not worthy of receiving unless my body is a particular way. And I have made money at all weights, and my body changes all the time. And so much of that through line is that self-love and acceptance that I have to go back to again and again. And I see people do this. I mentioned briefly dancing. So I'm part of a ballet studio, and every couple of months we have a photo shoot. And there were a few people, I was like, oh, you coming to the photo shoot? And one of the ladies, she was like, oh, I'm too old. And I was like, well, you're never going to get any younger. Right. Like, don't you want to capture where you are now so you can look back at that? And she was like, oh, no. And then I sort of go, oh, yeah. And I thought that's such a big part of it, right, is that we think I'm not perfect enough
not
yet.
Ready.
So I'm not ready. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've had photo shoots, you know, at least once or twice a year at all different weights. And I'm so glad that I capture that part of my life and my journey, because otherwise we're always waiting on the weight. We're always waiting on the thing. And you can love yourself at any size, you can love yourself at any income. It's not always going to be easy, but we can work on it, right? Get your boobs on board again,
I love
whatever
it.
size they are.
Getting your boobs on board.
My boobs have been all different sizes as well over my journey.
Always on board. Yeah.
Always.
Your kids are growing up with very different financial circumstances than you did. So how does one raise their kids to have a good money mindset in a wealthy household or a not wealthy household?
Absolutely. So again, because I've worked with so many people now, realizing that there's not necessarily a correlation in how you grew up to how much money you had and how you feel about money, because often it's about how does your family talk about money? How do they talk about other people's money? How do they talk about receiving and deserving? And so you could have grown up with a lot of money, but your parents made you feel like it was a scarce resource. Yeah, because they were very frugal. And so you always felt like you were, days away from being evicted. That is a particular money personality. It's called the accumulator. And there's a spectrum of it from, hey, we're really careful with money and we research what insurance we have, to there's never enough. And there's rich people there, there's poor people there. It's never enough. We're going to be homeless on the street if you use an extra paper towel. And then the other side of it too is that sometimes what we learn, we copy without knowing that there's other ways. Sometimes we overcompensate from that. So there'll be people who grew up in a frugal household who are naturally frugal. There'll be people who'll then go the other way and never want to look at the cost, right? So if we think of, for us, our own personalities, what we've seen and, what's created that, what I aim for my kids is as much neutrality around money as possible.
Oh,
so
neutrality,
yes.
Not we love money. Money's great. Let's get more money. Not that.
No. Sometimes, but I feel like for my lineage, we needed a bit of a reset. And so I felt like I was overcompensating a little bit of going, there's always more money, and
money flows to me effortlessly and easily, like that sort of vibe.
Absolutely, which they definitely have a little bit. Like if they find a coin on the street, I'm like, you are such a money magnet. But the thing is, though, we have to focus on our own stuff. And so I'm just trying to own my money stuff and knowing that whatever we do with our kids, they'll either copy or overcompensate, right? So that's why I'm aiming for neutrality, because I think their world is going to be completely different to ours. And they will absolutely get money blocks from me either way. Whatever I do, they'll get some sort of money blocks. So an example of neutrality is not giving them any like massive nervous system jolts around money. Like I remember giving my daughter 50 cents, which they're about this big in Australia, really big, to buy an apple. And then she went to put it in her mouth. And I went, money's dirty. And I went, oh my God, not only have I said money is dirty, I've actually given her a big jolt to her nervous system. So what I try and do is to say, hey, in our family, we don't put money in our mouths. We take care of money in our family. So I want it just to be something that's like not a scary thing either way. Just something that has like, money is money. So I'll say things like, money doesn't make you a good person. It doesn't make you a bad person. And we'll see what this comes like. It's an experiment, right? Because I am 100% new money.
Right.
I am new money. And I want them to have an easy, good relationship with money where it's just like, money is. That's what I'm aiming for first. Money is.
Money is. Do you feel strongly about giving them a boost or that they should earn their own way? Do you have strong feelings about any of that stuff?
I go in between this. I absolutely do. I feel like at the start when Mark and I were setting our goals, we both wanted to make a really big splash on the world. And I think we were so motivated by making money and overcoming that we realized that actually our values as a family, we want to give them like a middle class upbringing because neither of us had that. So we kind of overcompensated, and we were kind of like, they were probably the rich kids at their last school. They went to public school, which, we're passionate about public school. But it was like, oh, we're creating a contrast for them. So we actually downsized. I mean, our new house is lovely, but it's not as necessarily as flashy as our last one because we're trying to get stability. And I think my thought at the start was, look at me breaking all these cycles because I'm really rich. But actually, I wasn't breaking any cycles at all. I just had
You're overcompensating.
more money. Yeah, I was overcompensating.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm still going to see how it goes because I'm sure there's times where we have overcompensated and created a bit too much. Like the first time my daughter flew in a normal plane and she was like, I'm ready for my seat to go down now. And I was like, oh, shit. So I feel like we've come full circle on this. I'm like, I don't care if they're entrepreneurs now. I would love if they just had some nice, stable, middle-class careers because that's never happened in my family before. I used to think I want them to, do that. And I'm like, oh, actually, I don't mind if they don't. I had to break free of so many things in my life, but I'm like, then what? I'm like, I'm okay. Yeah, does that make sense?
I don't need that for them.
Yeah, I'm sure we will help them buy a house and things like that, but I'm not, like, oh, I'm doing it for the kids. I'm building this big trust fund. I'm like, they'll be fine.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's probably the best money mindset that you could raise them with. You'll be fine. Yeah.
You'll be fine. Exactly. And I'm also just trying to be like, call out things as I see them. So if Willow came home and she said, oh, my friend said that money is a dirty word. And I was like, what? And she goes, she's not even allowed to say the word money.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I was like, well, what do you feel? How do you feel about that? I was like, well, in our family, I think that's a good one. In our family, we're allowed to talk about money. So I don't make it right or wrong, or if they say, can I have this thing? And I remember we were at Target or something and Willow's like, can I have this? And I went, no. And she goes, why not? You're a millionaire.
Ooh.
And in Target, right? And my mom was there and my mom said, but you're not, Willow. And I went, so then I had to start to say, well, you know what? In our family, we don't just buy stuff all the time for the sake of it because, we have to think about the environment and, we don't want you guys to be spoiled. And so,
no.
And I had to really think about that because it was easy for my mom. My mom would just say, we don't have the money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't say that because she has Googled my daughter now who's 11. I'm like, she has Googled me and she's how much money do we have in the bank, Mom? And I've gone, shit, I can't say none of your business. I'm thinking, what money block am I going to give her by talking about this? So I think for parents, don't overthink it. Just start to see how am I talking about money? How am I demonstrating worthiness? And I feel like the fact that I'm demonstrating to my kids, you know what? My hobbies are important. My work is important to me. I feel like that's more important than sitting down and doing money mindset lessons with them. But I will absolutely get it wrong, even though I write books about this, because sometimes we don't know what is going to be a thing until later on.
Of course.
With our lives, right? How many tiny little things have happened where we've gone, that's changed the whole trajectory of my life and my money mindset. So we can't overthink those things.
One thing that I'm really interested in right now is the concept of enough. As in, there's a certain amount that brings you so much happiness. And then after that, it's not only diminishing returns, but you get to a certain amount that it actually starts to make you feel less happy. And I feel like you're on board with this because you're such a fan of decluttering. But I wonder, does that apply to money? Can you have too much money?
Oh, great question. Well, there are studies about this and it's very outdated, but there was a point where they said, over $75,000 a year has diminishing returns. It would absolutely be a different amount now. But there is absolutely that thing of too muchness. And I think it's not even necessarily about money because I think if that's in our personality anyway, I'm absolutely in this conversation with you, right? So I like tap dancing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried on these amazing pair of tap shoes recently, and they were like bright blue. And I posted them on my Facebook feed. I was like, do I really need, and someone was like, well, you're a millionaire, just buy them. And there was like a trite answer and also the real answer in there of going, but I have three pair of tap shoes, right? And I'm like, just because I can afford it, that's not the point. And I think this is where you see people who are wealthy, who we do not want to look up to. It is never enough for them. They can never have enough money or houses or yachts or businesses or whatever it is. It's not enough. And I feel like we can have dissatisfaction at any income level. And it is that hungry ghost feeling. And I think we can have that around success as well. Those times sometimes, especially I know if you've got the ruler in your personality, that Sunday afternoon where you're sitting and you're just being, and then there's that part of you that goes, you should be working.
Should be doing something right now. Yeah.
You should be doing
what needs
something.
doing. Yeah.
Yes, it's the same feeling. So we've got to try and balance like contentment and striving in a healthy way. And I don't know the answer on that. I know for myself, it got to a point 2 years ago where I was like, I've pretty much doubled my business every year. So the next logical goal for me would be 10 million a year. And then I was like, but why? For what? For why? And so then I realized I could have richness in other areas of my life too. And that's when I started going back to ballet, when I started doing cross stitch and, it sold my house. It was just like, oh, what really brings me joy here? And I feel like that's applicable to many of us, no matter what income we are, is where can we be happy? And you're still allowed to have, things that you still want to do. I don't know. It's a really tricky one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. Well, Denise, I feel like this is, present in so much of your work because your podcast, which, by the way, anyone listening, Denise's podcast is called Chill and Prosper, and it has the best intro music. The best.
Yes, it's
really
so cute.
So cute.
She's Canadian, by the way, Faraday.
Oh, no way.
Who she did my intro music, and she makes really funny videos about motherhood and being a woman and stuff like that. So yeah, she did it.
I might get that link for
Faraday
you.
Danger, yeah.
Love it. Thank you. Anyway, so it's called Chill and Prosper. And the idea, as I understand it, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, is that you can be prosperous in, of course, money, but also in time and ease and the decisions. It's not just about money. And I love this concept that being prosperous is about so much more than money and that you can do it in a really relaxed way. And it's so at odds with the kind of Protestant work ethic of you can have money, but you better earn it. What about your work ethic? That being the primary thing. Do you want to say anything about that?
Absolutely. So there's no doubt when you want to create something, there is work involved. There's no doubt, right? Whether you want to get fit, you want to make money, there is a certain amount of work involved. But the way you do that can be easier. Especially like from a business context, one of the ways to make it less effortful, I guess, is to create your business in alignment with your personality. To be really clear on your strengths and your weaknesses and to hire out accordingly and to, batch things. I like to batch like my podcasts and, meal prepping or things like that. But I think sometimes what we do is we overcomplicate things because we do feel like we have to earn it. And that's when you see people going against their natural grain, making things harder than they need to be, doing things themselves. That's when it's hard. So my personality is always like, how can we find the easiest way to do this and get the same or better result? And sometimes even not even the same result. Sometimes you take a little bit less of a result, but it's easier. Or it's more
have you ever heard the
pleasurable.
expression 80% done by someone else is 100% fucking awesome?
Oh, I love that. I love that. Absolutely. Yeah, a good example I think of that is, so we had our cleaner come yesterday. We've got a new cleaning company and it's not quite right, but I'm like, but I didn't have to do it.
Sure. That's great.
So sometimes
Massive
it's like,
value in that.
yeah, so I'm like, okay, it's fine. Same in, in your business, or if you're delegating something, it's just like, well, I didn't have to do it. So my book, Chill and Prosper, very much goes through that too, of going, what's the path of least resistance for you, not for someone else, for you, and give yourself permission to make things as easy as possible, knowing that you'll still have to do stuff, but there is always different ways that you can do anything. And it's okay for you to find the shortcuts or the cheats or the ease in anything. And I think sometimes people really resist that.
Right. Well, it's the same amount of, it's the feeling of deservingness. I deserve this. I don't have to work really hard in order to deserve a good life or
absolutely
ease or happiness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Denise, if anyone's listening to this and they are starting to like recognize a few maybe money blocks that they could have, and maybe that they want to start working on healing their relationship with money, what would be the first thing they should do?
Well, actually, my book, Get Rich Lucky Bitch, is a really, I think it's a good starting point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not only if you're new to this conversation, because some people will message me and say, I didn't think I had money blocks, but you've kind of opened this can of worms for me. So that book is, Kindle, paperback, or audio, all those things. I read it as well. And I think that's a really good starting point, honestly. And also come and follow me on social media, because you might just get a few little nuggets here and there. So I'm Denise DT on most social platforms. And I think it's just fun to be curious. My work is not heavy and dark, and I'm not taking you to horrible, traumatic places. We come at it from a real place of curiosity, because once you have compassion for yourself, you can go, oh, no wonder I feel that way about money or success because of this thing. And the more that you are in that conversation with other people, it really normalizes it, and you have compassion for yourself too.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that I got to get some of your time today, Denise. It's been awesome to finally meet you. And thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure, Una. Thank you so much for having me, and big hugs to everyone listening. Thank you so much.
Okay, how great was Denise? I don't know about you, but I am feeling a little bit more worthy and a lot more likely to go clean out my junk drawer and call it energetic alignment. Here are some of the takeaways I loved from this conversation. I love the idea that how you do money is how you do everything. And all those little moments where you belittle yourself, like, oh, I'm in a rush, so I'll just make my meal the leftover crusts from my kids' lunch. That energy is probably showing up in your bank account too. Because there's a connection between your sense of worthiness and your wealth. As Denise said, manifesting isn't about being pure of heart and thought and meditating on a mountain. It's about getting clear on what you want, clearing space for that to actually happen, and then having the fucking ovaries to receive it because you believe that you deserve it. And I'll just reiterate the power of her exercise of looking in the mirror or standing in front of a group, as I witnessed, and saying, this is what a wealthy woman looks like. Because it's about reclaiming the idea that you don't have to look, act, or live in a certain way to be allowed abundance, your version of abundance. You just have to stop waiting to be perfect. And by the way, I think a lot of people had that epiphany about fitness when we looked at the diversity of female Olympic athletes and realized, oh, this is what a fit woman looks like. And we don't have to wait until we look like the cover of Shape magazine in order to claim an identity of being healthy or being fit or being athletic. Anyway, listen, if this conversation resonated, I highly recommend go check out Denise's books. And if you are a business owner, her podcast, Chill and Prosper, is like a breath of fresh air in a sea of commission, breath, and hustle culture. And as always, I want to hear what you think. And I actually have a new tool. You can click on the link in the show notes and send me a little voice message. You don't have to sign into anything. It's just a quick button press and you send me a little voice message. Isn't that fun? Okay, go do that now. Let me know what resonated in this episode, and I will see you next week. Hey dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.